What am I worried about? I don't know. Everything that could possibly happen that's been awful has happened. We are at the moment, a really nasty bear market. Bear markets have really unpleasant mechanism of making everyone just do nothing. Reduce costs, don't commit to anything new. Second that bear market finishes, it's game on for expansion.
You've probably heard me mention Uphold before, and there's a reason I keep talking about them. Uphold makes it incredibly easy to bridge the gap between your portfolio and the real world. This has not been done before. Their Uphold Debit Card is the best example of that. It lets you spend your crypto or your cash anywhere Visa is accepted, all while earning 4% back in XRP on every purchase. It's the easiest way to stack rewards on your daily spending. Download the Uphold app for more and get started. Welcome back to another XRP pod. Today, of course, is going to be amazing because I've got Hugo here with me. There's some big news happening out there. We are going to break it all down for you guys. One thing I do want you to do, if you haven't already, is subscribe now. And remember, we do have the community out there as well. So get involved in that. Sometimes you'll get videos like this a little bit early, which is only for members. Hugo, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I mean, it's the typical, race to the clarity issue, which is slowly dimming the light right now in DC as they get ready to exit, which does not look like it's going to happen. A cloture vote, at least, unless some miracle comes out today or tomorrow, which I don't anticipate because Friday's out of and most of these guys have probably already left DC. So they wouldn't be able to hold a vote even if they could. So that in itself is kind of creating a little bit of angst. But I wonder if there's going to be, Hester herself, I put out a tweet this morning, has said the SEC is primed and ready to go here in terms of setting up regulatory framework. So it doesn't look like there's going to be much of an impasse on crypto in general. What do you think? Where do you think this is going to take us?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on the US regulatory orders, but it does seem that the clarity bill isn't passing anytime soon. Even if you just go by the poly market sort of probabilities that 30% of it passes in 2026, which
Yep.
probably, I tend to find poly market fair estimate of these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame. Yeah, I think it would be good if it does passes soon. There does need to be an overhaul of the regulatory environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the whole point behind this was to at least get companies that were trying to do business here in the US some sort of framework. Some of them will be affected. I know a lot of people will probably start to devise new strategies globally of how they're going to run their organizations and probably some of the kind of products that are eventually going to be launched as well. Obviously, Flare has had a recent announcement out there in terms of lending now with what you guys are doing. I wanted to jump over to a post you guys put up here just this week. I'll bring it up on screen for everybody so they completely understand. But XRP now, institutional credit rails on ETH mainnet. This is going to be enabled by you guys. FXRP is now a collateral in Satora HQ's RLUSD vault, and this is over on Morpho. Explain to me, I know you were working on this for quite some time. We talked about it in the last time you were on the show. Is this how much of an impact do you think this has on the general community of Flare, number one, and then what's happening in the Ripple community as well?
Yeah, sure. So I put out a post a couple of maybe a week or so ago now, saying that over the next 6 months, there's a number of things that are coming to fruition that we've been working on for a while that we feel takes XRP5 from where it is today and radically expands it. And this is the first one of those things. And why is that the case? What's happening here? So what this market is a lending and borrowing market on Ethereum, on Morpho, which is one of the more favored institutional lending platforms. And it's a market that is curated by institutional curator called Centaura. Centaura also built, or incubated with us Firelight and run it. So Centaura is one of the largest curators in the space, and they curate and work with a number of different institutional partners, not least exchanges. And so this is, whilst we do have a lending market on Flare and we take advantage of the lending markets across the space. So you'll find FXRP on Base, you'll find it on lots of different chains. This is a market that is formally structured to be sizable. It allows you
Right.
to borrow RLUSD, which is quite nice for the XRP community. And because of the institutional curation element, the concept here is to expand that out and then be able to offer XRP Fi to institutional partners.
So XRP Fi institutional partners, because this is something that we are already seeing in some other assets. Obviously, with what you guys have rolled out, and we'll talk about, kind of the cap that was hit early on. But I guess that's the real question is, because do you feel that institutional is really going to start to accelerate usage of these kinds of tools, or is it going to take a longer time for them to really come into this market? What's your feeling on this?
So I think they are already using these tools for other assets.
Right.
Let's be absolutely clear. So, exchanges broadly, at least in our case. And one of the reasons why this is incredibly important for us is that exchanges, well, we have a large retail community, but beyond that retail community, the rest of the XRP sits at exchanges broadly.
Mm-hmm.
So, at Flare, we've worked very, very hard to enable those people that keep their XRP in a wallet to be able to use Flare's protocols. We've built the Flare Smart accounts to make that incredibly easy, one click, completely abstract away Flare's complexity. But the next the next milestone, the next hurdle is to enable exchanges, which are crypto institutions,
Right.
to be able to put the XRP that they hold on their balance sheet to work on behalf of their customers. Obviously, they won't be just doing that without their customers' permission. Things like earn programs
Mm-hmm.
are what we're talking about. People will know that we already have Uphold, who have committed to offering Firelight
Yep.
within the Uphold platform. And I think this goes to, an additional product beyond, just Firelight. So the idea is, because of the institutional curation, because of the the addition of an asset, which is RLUSD, additional stablecoin supply, it just means that we can expand the product offerings and we can work with different, more institutional partners. So do I think they're going to come on board immediately? No. I don't think, in the next, let's say, week, 2 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, probably not. First of all, it's summer. Secondly, they'll want to take a view on how the market unfolds, what the liquidity looks like, what the risk parameters are. Someone like Uphold or another large exchange is not going to come in to a market that currently has a $1 million utilization. They'll
Right.
want to see, more sizable markets.
Well, and I think you're getting it right there is the sizable market of this in itself. I mean, if you look at XRP, it's roughly the fourth largest crypto market cap out there, 70 bill, but it doesn't have use in on-chain lending, which is the whole power of where Ethereum. So even if if you compared it to what's been going on with ETH and even wrap Bitcoin and stablecoins, the template is essentially there already. So, and we know what those markets have been able to do. And it goes back to your point, a lot of idle capital now becomes very productive collateral, which is probably the most underperforming opportunity. This could be big for XRP because I think a lot of times people, in some cases, won't hold XRP unless they're completely, zoned in on what XRP is. but this opens up maybe other people to come into it just because of the way they can use it now. Do you think that's going to expand the market base?
I think it should. I think Flare more or less has been single-handedly spearheading XRP as a collateral asset.
Yeah.
And I think we've been the most successful at that so far. And I think, that's valuable to us, but it's also valuable to the XRP community. It's valuable to Ripple. It's valuable to anyone that's looking at XRP as an investment or an asset that they would like to hold. And I think it's important at this point to delineate between what we're doing and what, the upcoming XLS 66 protocol does.
Yeah.
So, what we've just enabled with Morpho on mainnet and Centura is the ability to borrow RLUSD,
Mm-hmm.
maybe other stable coins down the line, collateralized by XRP. So I put up $1.5 of XRP and I can borrow $1. This means that sort of anyone can take their XRP and put it in that market and borrow. And that's very important. What XLS 66 does is it's an uncollateralized lending protocol. So you organize your credit rating or your guarantee of payment off chain. So it doesn't really offer the same kind of functionality of being able to take your XRP and borrow dollars with it. So we're very much spearheading that market. We're looking to expand it. We're looking to offer products around it.
Yeah, I think just for everybody, because I think, both Ripple and I think even Flare, you guys were strategic investors in Centaurus Series A.
Mhm.
So it's good because I think we're starting to see now a lot of growth opportunity. Because remember, what is it right now in terms of adoption? What like 150 mil FXRP
Yeah,
minted
it's
so far?
it's 150 million. I mean, I think Lucas from Centaura, mentioned yesterday that their first major milestone for the market is 50 million of stablecoin
Okay.
borrows.
Yeah.
We all would like to expand it very, very rapidly, but it takes time to source stable coins, and there's risk dynamics that come in. They can't just pull all the whole curated ROUSD vault is about $280 million
Yeah.
worth of ROUSD. Unfortunately, although for them this is their business, they can't just pull that $280 million
Right.
and put that straight into the FXRP market. They have risk parameters that they need to respect, and that's very important. So we'll be growing as that. Their goal is for that market to grow against FXRP to 50 million as a first milestone. That would be a very good initial institutional onboarding. 50
Mm-hmm.
million is an institutional ticket size, really. I think once we can demonstrate that that market works at 50 million, I think it can go a lot higher.
Well, and just so I think everybody, this isn't necessarily new on with FXRP because I know you guys. This has been
Well, we
usable.
have that market on Flat.
Yeah. Yeah.
The difference is, I'll be absolutely brutally straightforward. Sourcing stable coins is the greatest hurdle
Yeah.
for building this market. People want a higher return to have their stable coins on a
Mm-hmm.
different chain, to have a stable coin not on ETH mainnet. And so, going to mainnet is going where the stable coins are. This is why Ripple launched RLUSD on
Yeah.
Ethereum mainnet. That doesn't mean it doesn't benefit Flare. Massively benefits Flare over the long term and over the short term. The more the market for FXRP grows, the more our own DeFi market will grow. Flare gets transaction fees, it gets proof fees, minting and redemption fees of FXRP. But if there's a big market over here on ETH mainnet, and the market over here on Flare also has to grow,
Mm-hmm.
DEXs have to grow, the lending has to grow. It's just natural. There's a 100 million borrowed over here, there's no reason that you wouldn't have a growth over here. And that's, critically important for Flare. Our goal is to build FXRP into the largest possible market we can, because over time that just benefits the network
Yeah.
hugely.
Well, it does benefit the market. I think the other area that is going to be the breakthrough is the adoption, curve that we could see with just in UX, because that's a huge friction point, I think, right now. I know you guys are developing smart accounts to kind of let users do this now from their own wallet. First of all, how is that coming? And do you see a future where we're going to see this really narrowed down into a much more simplistic way to get it done?
Yeah, so I think smart accounts are the most powerful tool that we have that any non-direct XRP, any platform that is not directly on the XRP ledger, of that, smart account is the most powerful tool that any platform could harvest.
Yeah.
And that is that it allows us to effectively go to people where they are, which is the XRP ledger, where they hold
Right.
their wallet, where they, use a wallet service like Zaman or Decent or Joey Wallet or any of those wallets. And it allows them to make transactions from the XRP ledger that does things elsewhere. Right now, Flare Smart Accounts already exists. You can do some limited functionalities with it. You can deposit in some different vaults on Flare. I think one of the next things we'll be rolling out is the ability to borrow RLUSD on Ethereum and have that RLUSD deposited into your address on the XRP ledger.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
will be effectively for the user, that'll be like having a native collateralized lending protocol on
That
the
could be
XRP
huge.
ledger.
That
I think it's great. I talk a lot about institutions. For retail, the ability to just borrow ROUSD from Ethereum, have it dropped into your address on the XRP
Mhm.
ledger with, you've borrowed it against your XRP, and it's all abstracted away. You never leave that wallet. You make a couple of transactions within that wallet, and it all just gets done, and you get the RLUSD. To me, that's as close as you'll ever get to without a major change in the XRP ledger. That's effectively a native collateralized borrowing protocol.
Yeah. Explain because I know there's a lot of people out there in DeFi that they're doing this now. They're going through all these hoops and hurdles to get this done in some other assets. And if you look at, just some of the risk layers that we're potentially exposing ourselves to, especially if you take wrapping agents, and you go into, F assets, the bridge risks that are there, what would you say you have been able to overcome to reduce those risks right now?
So I think the biggest risk of loss is clicking scam link
Yeah.
right now. That's where we're struggling. There's so many scams on Twitter that are
Hmm.
pretending to be Flare, pretending to be Firelight. With regards to the bridge, I can bang on till I'm blue in the face about how secure it is and how much we've tested it and how it's structured to be secure. I think what's important to understand is that Centura did a multi-month due diligence of FXRP,
Yeah.
as have many of their partner exchanges. They've looked at every aspect of how the bridge works and how it is then bridged onto
Hmm. Hmm.
Ethereum. And they decided to support it as an eligible collateral asset. As one of the largest curators in the space, that is a huge vote of confidence. They, they make their money by curating these markets and by apportioning assets like RLUSD to lending markets such that they don't lose money. To have passed that risk review as an asset is a big vote of confidence.
Yeah, I look at it, with like with Morpho Blue, they have these isolated markets that kind of keeps each pair's collateral, the liquidation thresholds, et cetera, separate. So that in itself should be good, but at the same time, does it start to kind of cut both ways with thinner liquidity if you do have an isolated market, that can make liquidations obviously messier during that first drawdown if you saw one. Are you concerned about that at all, or do you think that this is maybe more of a broadly converging trend that's starting to develop right now around just isolated
No,
lending?
I think all lending will be isolated over
Okay,
time.
all right.
Yes, you could do commingling, and that those were the original models, right? Where you had pool of assets.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think what works for institutions is isolated markets,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore
Isolated.
you've really got to have done your risk analysis
Yeah.
on the collateral. That's been done for FXRP, and it passed. And that's been done to the standard that an exchange would want to. The Centura wouldn't have accepted it as collateral if they didn't think they could bring in their institutional partners.
Right. What about the FXRP Mint growth? What would we expect over, say, the next 6 months? Where do you see this heading?
Last time I made a prognostication on your show, I got A, it was wrong by a very large factor.
Yeah.
B, I continually get hammered for it.
Well, let's adjust it. Let's adjust it.
What I will say is we are in at the moment a really nasty bear market.
Yeah.
I expect that to finish up towards the end of the year, early next year. Not
Okay.
financial advice, and I'm not just talking about Flare. I'm talking about broadly the crypto market. Bear markets have really unpleasant mechanism of making everyone just do nothing, reduce cost, don't commit to anything new,
Yeah.
see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Second that bear market finishes, it's game on for expansion. I'll stick to where Centura put it. Their first milestone for the vault is 50 million of
Yeah.
50 million of stablecoin borrowing, which would be about 90 million of XRP,
Mm-hmm.
FXRP minted. So I'll stick to that as a prognostication. And then if we go higher than that, I'll be very happy. Although
Yeah.
I think with Firelight also launching fully, I think the possibility for expansion is very.
Yeah. I was looking at, the 100 million range in terms of expansion. You don't think that that's possible because that, to your point, when you look at the end of a market, a bear
Well,
market, like
I
what
think
we're,
I think with the lending market working well and
yeah,
the launch of Firelight, the phase two of Firelight,
yeah,
I think 100 million is certainly doable. It's really just a question of whether institutions come and play,
yeah.
and then 100 scales rapidly to bigger numbers.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's my point is it's the timing. If you look at just the potential opportunity here with Firelight and in general, the market timing here as well, because I think we're on the back half. Obviously, you just mentioned on the back half of this bear market, and there are a lot of indicators now that are pointing to potentially early 2027. This could be a little bit of a retrace into a lot of these assets like XRP and many others, which in most cases is the perfect time to start looking at doing something like this. So I just feel like this
Well,
is
look,
an
we've got all
opportunity.
the ducks in a row.
Yeah.
To be clear, like we talk to a lot of exchanges. We have plans in place to increase the liquidity.
Hmm.
It's all there. These things just take time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that is, yeah, time I think is the key overall. And a lot of times these markets people think that it's going to be faster. and much more efficient than, than what they anticipated. Just look at what's going on with Clarity right now. I
Yeah.
mean, Clarity was supposed to be locked and loaded last August. This, of course, is August of 25, not 6. So here we are, August, and a year later, all sorts of things hit the fan in terms of issues that we're facing. So that in itself is a big deal. What do you make of I know you guys are Mika compliant as the token, but when you look at Mika in general, where do you see Mika having impacts on the crypto market? Ripple just got their EU authorization for some of their CASP programs, that license from Luxembourg. So what kind of impact
I
do you
mean,
think
I
Mika is
think
going
it's
to
good
have?
there's a regime.
Yeah.
Having clarity in any market is
Hmm.
quite good.
Yeah.
I think, Mika, at least for the things that I care about, can be a bit stricter than
Explain.
perhaps well, with regards to, let's say, how vaults and things work,
Okay.
they can be a bit stricter than how,
Mm,
to say, the US interpretation. And that, the Europeans are fundamentally more restrictive on
right.
what their citizens can and can't do
Mhm.
than the Americans. But it's very good that there is a framework.
What do you make of what's happening in Japan right now? They have almost fully embraced crypto as a whole, kind of almost restructuring their entire financial system. It appears we may end up seeing the carry trade convert to a blockchain soon. How would that impact what you're doing globally?
I mean, I'm not sure it's going to impact almost what any of us do, because I don't think it's going to touch the tokens like Bitcoin and things like that. Maybe XRP will going to benefit. I think I think it's just really good for stable coins.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the key here is that this is about the lowest I've seen the market in terms of sentiment in
Mhm.
8, 9 years. I mean, it's been low before, but this has just a compiled effect of regulation, hurdling blocks,
Oh,
macro
plus,
headwinds.
yeah,
Even though we are seeing a lot of, activity, it feels like it's just activity, and that's usually coming from Wall Street, which is just building a blockchain, not necessarily deploying into the asset base. So that's a challenge, I think, that of course affects a lot of retail today. And anybody that's watching our podcast, they've been around for a long time,
mm. I
in
mean,
this
look,
space.
I love it when sentiment's awful.
Yeah.
The worse sentiment is, the more bullish I am.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
you know, that makes me very happy.
Yeah. The cold card situation with their firmware vulnerability, which went undetected, obviously, and that was by AI code, could not even detect this. So that was surprising to me. Do you think that has any implication on future adoption cycles, or do you think that's going to scare off retail or just in general, even more technically savvy investors from
It
crypto?
shouldn't. It
Shouldn't.
shouldn't.
Okay.
I mean, it's a screw up, but it really shouldn't have, you know, wide-reaching effects. It wasn't
Yeah.
a hugely used, platform anyway.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and I've worked with a number of people that build wallets, and finding the right source of entropy, or constructing the right source of entropy, which is where the
Hmm.
issue was with the gold card,
Yeah, for sure.
is always a mechanism. The most important thing they do, or one of the most important things they do,
Right.
and that there was a failure there is kind of is odd, actually. I don't really understand how they messed that one up.
It is a little bit bizarre, to see these kinds of late stage bear market situations, because I feel like most wallets are so, ready for AI right now. that their defense and security teams are just amped up to, almost every company I talk to, they're spending so much on security right now. So it is a little bit of an odd situation. Okay, Hugo, what can you share with us around Flare's roadmap for the rest of this year? Here we are in August. There's 4 months left. Is there anything big coming that you can kind of talk to?
Well, there might be some big things coming, but nothing I can talk to.
Okay.
Look, it's just going to be more of the same.
Yeah.
Basically, trying to build out this market, expanding this, working with our partners, making the systems easier to use for retail, new
Right.
product launches,
Yeah.
especially the Flare Smart Accounts and the ability to borrow USD and have it deposited on the XRP ledger or at your exchange.
Mm-hmm.
These are all important things in the roadmap. Release of Flare 2.0, but I think the partnership announcements, the things that are sort of in the basket, I can't really comment on.
Well, good. Well, that tells me you got something in the hopper, which is usually the case when I talk to you. Is there's always some new element that is being looked at, which is good because I think we're going to see maybe timing here because a lot of founders and people that I'm talking to right now are kind of in the same boat. They're on the edge of announcing something big, so that tells me that we are nearing a cycle end because as we know, the really smart builders are doing exactly that right now, and that is building for sure. Are you
Hopefully, I mean, look, I think one of the things you'll see is, you know, outside of XRP 5, I think you'll see Flare being used for data purposes,
Mhm.
and that'll be, you know, we obviously use Flare's data within our DeFi ecosystem.
Yeah.
That's what it was built for. But I think you'll see a much broader usage of that.
Mhm. Well, I mean, the XRP
That's the limit of what I'll say.
okay, all right. I think I know where you're going with that. We'll have to talk about that at another time for sure. And XRP Fi in general, I mean, the expansion has been very good. Obviously, with Morpho, you've got in there Superform, Spectra, all those guys, as well as Mystic, which I know is already rolled out.
Yeah.
But that is all fantastic. Now, some of those, though, when I go over and look at your XRP5 page on earning yield, I'm seeing some that are a little bit out there in terms of what yield. So to me, that just means risk bubble. Whether you look at SparkDex or it was Enosys, I think was the other one.
No, I mean, SparkX gets so the yields are high because they receive incentives because we want liquidity within the DEX.
Right.
It's the
Right.
driving, it's the forcing function of DeFi, right?
Hmm.
Like you can't, the rest of DeFi doesn't work if you don't have the liquidity in the DEXs.
Exactly. Back to your point about sourcing stablecoins.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which is a challenge. I think SparkDex was around 13% if I remember off of my
Yeah. 13% for USDT zero.
yeah. Yeah, so
I mean, look, there is IL, but 13% is 13%.
yeah. Why okay, so I know Firelight is involved in this as well, but there's some of these platforms that aren't paying that much. Do you think we're going to see a yield battle coming down the pipe with an opportunity here?
Well, it depends what you're talking about. So it depends what the activity is. So for instance, with lending, the max yield you can really get is sort of 6-7%.
Mhm.
With DEX, it's because of IL, you've got to pay a higher yield.
Right.
So it's all about risk. IL has risk, therefore you have to pay a higher yield.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Lending has far less risk because it's
Right.
collateralized, therefore it pays a lower yield.
Mhm.
I think Firelight will have a moderate yield because I don't think it's a hugely risky protocol.
Mhm. Yeah, that's kind of the way I see it is, well, if you look at Morpho, I think it's around five and a half or something right now, whether you're lending or borrowing different variations of it. So obviously Morpho being kind of the big player in the market. So there are some opportunities there. What are you worried about between now and the end of the year? If, from a market perspective, but possibly in general for crypto as an industry? Anything specific?
I guess, continuation of the bear market, but then I expect that to happen, until, I'm thinking fourth quarter is when it starts to turn around.
Yeah.
But that's just my own personal view, and it's not financial advice. But what am I worried about? I don't know. Everything that could possibly happen that's been awful has happened. So,
Yeah. It feels
um,
like it.
it's not like we've had an easy ride, right? Like, if you just take clarity, it hasn't. It could have passed a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's sort of like everything that if you paint the worst picture possible, that's the one we've got.
Yeah. No kidding. I mean,
Yeah.
regulatory,
I
conflict
was
in the Middle
worried.
East.
Yeah, exactly. The end of the carry trade.
Yeah.
Why not just throw? I mean, aliens will be the next one.
What else? Yeah. What else is left?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think unless I was worried about AI
Oh, okay.
being taking finding a lot of exploits in protocols.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And you're saying less
of
so
course,
now?
there's going to be more exploits. There's always going to be exploits, but
Yeah.
I was worried about there being really a very substantial amount of exploits in
I
a very
see.
short
Okay.
period of time. I think it's hard to say this with confidence, but I think I would imagine that most of the surface area that is exposed has been found at this
Okay.
point.
Yeah.
So, to give you an example, we use a huge amount of AI to check everything at Flare constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple models. We've built an entire internal kind of agent system
Right.
to look at this. It's not. It's obviously not the only thing we do, but I was worried about it. I think that what was exploitable has probably 95% been exploited at this point.
Yeah. That's good to hear from a founder because I feel like you're pretty plugged in and you're extremely cautious of all the founders I talk to. You're always, even when we're off air, we talk a lot about that. And your apprehensiveness, I won't say it doesn't hold you back because I think the development is still happening. But I just think you guys are making smarter moves than some protocols out there.
Well,
And
look,
you're very cognizant of that. So it's important.
I come from a risk and investment background. Although Flare does not have a fiduciary responsibility to its
Right.
users, we act as if we do.
Yeah. Well, and I think it shows. So that's the cool part. But the fact that I hear you saying that you feel like maybe that is starting to
Well,
maybe lighten the load.
I think models have gotten to the point where they are sufficiently advanced that if
Yeah.
there were going to be exploits,
Mhm.
they will have been found and
Yeah,
exploited.
exactly. Yeah. Well, listen, that's a good thing because that usually means the bottom. When you see all of these things just continue to pile in on us. Many of you guys that are watching this right now, we know you've been here for a long time, so you understand these ebbs and lows and the recovery opportunities that it represents for these markets. So big times ahead. Hugo, thanks for coming in today. We're keeping a close eye on everything Flare is doing. We love what you guys are doing for the community in general. I think both on XRP, but I think for broader with crypto in general. So thanks for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.